Well, I mean, I think that what you saw in his rally last night was that President Trump is great at two things: the art of opposition and trolling. And that's basically what that rally was last night. So he's really good at finding something that all Republicans dislike, which is the media, right? The media, we don't like CNN, we don't like MSNBC. This is just true of conservatives. And so he takes that and he says, okay, unify around this. You can't unify around my policy. You may find me kind of weird. You may not like McConnell. You may not like Ryan. But we all dislike the media, so we can do that together. And then he says some things that are funny. I thought the elites comment was funny. Says some things that are outrageous, like people in the media aren't patriotic, knowing that people in the media are immediately going to turn it up to 12 on the Richter scale.
But Ben, don't you think he should be truthful in his comments, even if he's funny, and if you give him that, shouldn't he be truthful? And he wasn't.
Of course, and I think that this is where the media. Here's my advice to people in the media. My advice is turn down the emotion down to 1 and turn the fact checking up to 10, because I think what's happened here is that the amount of fact checking that's gone on has taken second place to the offense that people in the media are taking at his words. And I think that the problem is the American people have to know that what the media are trying to do is defend them from untruth, not defend themselves from insults. And until the media start making that distinction, a lot of people on Trump's side are going to think that this is just a rock'em sock'em robots between Trump and the media. They may not like either one, but they find it kind of amusing.
I'm glad you've come on CNN twice in the last week or so, even though you don't like us. Thank you.
Hey, no, I love you, Don.
Welcome to the panel. Ben, welcome back. Jason, I'm going to start with you. President Trump says he wants to unite our country, but then he says stuff like this. Watch it.
I always hear about the elite. You know, the elite, they're elite. I went to better schools than they did. I was a better student than they were. I live in a bigger, more beautiful apartment, and I live in the White House, too, which is really great. I think, you know what? I think we're the elites. They're not the elites. So the point is, and I didn't want to bore you because you understand where I'm coming from. You people understand. But the point is that those were three different. There were two statements and one news conference. The words were perfect.
So, Jason, it's a fascinating message. I mean, really think about it. From a New York billionaire who lives in a tower to a base of supporters he calls the forgotten Americans, and it's very powerful, and they love it. How did you respond to that?
Well, Donald Trump is a man who was born rich, believing he's a victim. He's a man who looks at what happened in Charlottesville, sees a woman be murdered, and says to himself, I'm the victim here. So everything about him is sort of casting himself in a victim mode, and often I think that's because he believes, often rightfully, that people in America won't blame the victim. And so when he's not doing a good job, and when the media, for instance, reports what he's doing, and he's not doing a good job, he figures he'll cast himself as the victim, and then it's very hard to blame him. It's his way of avoiding responsibility. It's sort of like a movie critic who decides to make a movie, and it turns out it's really bad. And that's because you can't make a movie by criticizing people, just like you can't lead a country by complaining all the time.
Well, so how do you go, John, from I love the uneducated to we are the elites? You know, and I live in. By the way, I know some wealthy people. They don't talk about. People who are really wealthy don't talk about how much money they have, and people who are really smart don't talk about how smart they are. But go on.
I guess Jason is now a psychoanalyst, psycho-babble, mumbo-jumbo, something about what Donald Trump thinks in his deep psyche. Look, you guys have no sense of humor. That was funny last night. You take his style and you get all caught up and your panties get in a wad. He's having fun last night talking to his base, the people who helped elect him president, that don't trust the media, they don't trust what you guys say, and they don't trust the elites in Washington. And so what he was saying is, hey, they think they're elite, they want to tell us what to do, they want to run our life, they've sold our jobs out, I'm going to unify the country. At the end of the day, we're the elite because we really understand what's going on. That's what he was saying last night.
Well, John,
so
let me just say
babble, this. Let me say this. Laughable.
And
this
Jason,
is why you guys are going to lose again.
Jason can defend himself. Listen, don't put. It's not you. Don't put me in the category. I'm not a partisan.
The Democrats are going to lose.
Okay,
again.
I'm not a Democrat, so don't put me in that category.
The Democrats are not you.
And number two, Listen, maybe you wear panties. I don't. So if your panties get in a wad, then that's your business. But I don't wear panties to get in a wad.
We got to have a sense of humor about this, man.
There's no sense of humor. If you are a person who he is speaking, if you're a member of the media who's in the back of the room and he's calling you a terrible person and saying that you don't care about America and you don't love America and you may be a victim, possibly a victim of violence, that's not funny. If you are a transgender person who has served this country with honor and distinction and he is thinking of kicking you out of the military, there is nothing funny about that. If you are a person, hold on, if you are a person, no, yes, I am being fair. I am being fair because he is, yes, I am. Let me finish. If you are the President of the United States, at every single moment, what comes out of your mouth matters to every single person in this country. And it is not funny when you are making fun of people and you're possibly putting people in harm's way of violence.
Don, it's also, it's actually possible for somebody to be humorous and do a decent job at the same time. It's not mutually exclusive. It's not like the President of the United States can be charming, but if he is, he has to be really bad at being president. I mean, he could actually do both things. He's just not.
The first rule of comedy is that it has to be funny. It wasn't funny.
Right.
Well, it wasn't funny to you. He had a rally last night. He had a good time. He's talking to his base. You don't like his style. He has two audiences. One audience is the international people, Americans at large in the media. The other audience, he was at a campaign rally last night talking to his base after he had a disastrous day on Monday with his base, where he went back on his word in getting us out of these wars. Neocons took over.
Was that
funny?
In
Afghanistan. No, it isn't. But he made a serious speech. But I'm telling you what, on his base on Monday was infuriated by that. Then he goes to the rally, throws out the red meat. Yeah. This is politics. I'm telling you, Donald Trump is going to win again because the great unifier is jobs, wages go up, economic prosperity, 3% growth.
Editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire and Breitbart's former editor-at-large, Ben Shapiro, and host of CNN's Reliable Sources, Brian Stelter. Welcome to both of you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Ben, I want to start with you. Steve Bannon's comments. First of all, your initial thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think that Steve's, first of all, I think you actually quote Steve completely. So when you say that he says the media should shut up, what he actually said is the media should shut up and listen more to the American people so that they can get better at their job, was essentially trying to say. Look, I'm not, as everyone knows, I'm not a big Steve Bannon defender. I'm not a big Steve Bannon fan. He's one of the worst people I personally know, but that has nothing to do with what he's saying here. I think that what he's actually saying here is not entirely incorrect. There is a vast gap between the media's perception of itself and the public perception of the media. The reason Trump keeps picking fights with the media is because it's a fight he can win. The American people don't actually trust the media at this point, mainly because the media seem like they're representing their own interests. We're like a separate class, as opposed to people who are defending the interests of the American people. And the more we get into slap fights with the administration, the more we get into slap fights with politicians on behalf of the press, on behalf of the media, instead of on behalf of the American people, the more the American people are going to be likely to just ignore it.
I'll run this by you, Ben. If a media entity is a cheerleader for Donald Trump and never puts his feet to the fire, won't you lose the trust of the American public too if you continue to do that consistently?
I certainly would hope so. I mean, I think that here's the thing. Every White House treats opposing media as the opposition. The Trump White House, I think, rightly looks at a lot of the mainstream media and says, you guys were the opposition during the campaign. You're still the opposition now. You don't particularly like me. And so you're going to be much more critical of me than friendly outlets like Fox News, for example. But the job of the media should be to understand that we're always the opposition. If we're the fourth estate and it's our job to check the government and it's our job to check the White House, it shouldn't matter whether you like or dislike the person in the White House particularly. You should be treating the White House as your opposition. The fact that the media did not treat President Obama as much as the opposition as they are President Trump is giving Trump the opening to slap you guys around. And I think that he's largely correct in slapping the media around by saying that there is a bias that exists for Trump that didn't exist for Obama. The best way to respond to that for the media is not to defend ourselves by saying, well, that's an attack on the press, that's an attack on the media. It's to say, okay, look, say what you're going to say. It's either true or it's false. And then treat it as a true false statement as opposed to a fight between the media and Donald Trump, because he's going to win that fight every time, at least in the minds of the public. The trucker from Michigan does not care if the media